Okay, welcome back. So we're talking about the input type, which I referred to as a filter for this edit text thing. So let's just take a look. So there's one about entering the date and a date time and none. Now, none is actually pretty good because later on, I'm going to pull up what's called a multi-line edit text. So I could just have a spot where I can just spit out messages. But I don't want you to be able to click in there and do anything at all. So I'm going to use an input type of none, which means it's completely read-only. In fact, you can't even click on it with your mouse at all. So we're going to use that one soon. And then numbers, we talked about that. So, and then numbers, you could have decimal numbers. You could have, you could have 14.4. Passwords where you don't actually get the, well, this is a numeric password. Sign numbers where I could go to negative numbers, and what a phone number looks like and what text looks like, and autocomplete, which means I want it to, like, if I type halfway through, it's going to say, aha, I know what that word is, and boop. Right, you would never use, well, not never, you probably would not use that on something like someone's name where the spelling might be kind of capital letters and capital sentences and capitalize the words and email addresses and there's a gazillion of these things. Now I use no text suggestion when I tell it that, look, don't do any dictionary work, don't underline anything, don't try to fix my spelling. So I need to be able to edit. I can't use none because I need to be able to type in my name, but don't do any spell check kind of a thing. And then all the rest of this stuff. Okay, so there's lots and lots of good stuff in here. I mean, look at how many there are. I mean, this is a lot of cool stuff. Okay, so back to our guy. All right, now, so what happens when I run this guy with an input filter? Let's go take a look at it one more time. I'm in the name, I get the pop-up keyboard. I do get a couple of suggestions going on here, okay? But if I misspell something, it's not going to come up and say, wait a minute now. When I switch down to the numeric one, I automatically get this keyboard. Hey, how do you make the keyboard go away? Like, hey man, you're taking up too much space, I'm done, okay? With the little down arrow, kind of makes the keyboard go away. Isn't that pretty cool? All right. All righty. So, the keyboard is kind of so each one of these edit text guys, with the possible exception of the none filter, has a pop-up keyboard, and the keyboard is specific. It'll do suggestions for you if you don't tell it you don't want suggestions. And then, like I like the number and the number decimal, the number sign. Those are pretty cool because when it comes time to age, I need to be able to figure out, am I going to be able to do input validation? So can this guy, is there something in here that says, like for the number, is there something in here that says like the minimum and maximum? Ooh, wouldn't that be cool? Have like, min value, here's min width, and no, max width, no. So there's nothing in here that says what the minimum, maximum acceptable value is for this guy. So we're going to have to do that on our own. Okay, so remember that text view and text edit can both be programmatically done, right? I mean, I can go in here and say, set text, right? Cool. But there's an interesting thing is that when we get into doing state changes, right? Like if I rotate my guy and it completely crashes the application and brings it all the way back up. Typically, if I'm using an edit text, the machine will automatically remember that. And that's pretty doggone cool. So there's an advantage in using an edit text just for storing stuff on the screen. Is that it will survive, a device shutdown. You don't have to do anything in Java to make that happen. It just comes with the package. There is a cool term in there, about how that works. And the word doesn't. The term they use is kind of funky. It doesn't actually mean anything. It just, anyway, forget it. Okay, so let's say I want to get some data from one of those guys. So here's where I set my title, but now I want to get some text back. So this is an edit text, and this one's called ET name, isn't it? I think it is. We're getting ready to find out. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go down to here, and I'm gonna inflate that guy. ET name is equal to find r.id id dot et name. Cool. So if I want to look at that guy and I don't know, do something with it, like I want to do a string. So string name is equal to, and I say et name. You would think this would be how it would work. ToString, right? That's what I think it would. That just kind of sort of makes sense. No, it doesn't work that way. This thing, if I say get text, so I want you to look at the help screen here and tell me what is the return type of get text. Is it a string? No, it is not. It is an editable. Now if I went to string, then I could actually get this thing to work. So wait a minute. What the heck is an editable? And how is that different than string? Well, string is just a normal everyday thing like you've been using since day one in Java, right? Nothing special here. But an editable could have formatting in it. It could have like a bold section, kind of sort of like HTML formatting. I mean, you could have an indentation or a bold or an italics or or font size change. So editable is the big part that contains lots of stuff. And typically that's cool for visual effects, but when it comes time to extracting the guy's name, I have to go through this extra step of going through and doing a get text and then turn right around and say, thank you, I got the text, now give me the string. I know, it's a little funky, just bear with me. Okay. So, remember how we did input validation in Chapter 9? So we're going to do that again here. And I'm going to start at exactly what we did in Chapter 9. And I'm going to do a little tweak to it. So just give me a second. Okay, what I've done is I just copied the validate int thing we did from Chapter 9. Now, it's assuming that we have a thing called et display, which we don't have. So let's just fix that really quick. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to grab a multi-line guy. All right, so basically, I just want a normal, everyday, multi-line text. Now, this time, I want the multi-line text. It's okay for it to be bigger, because I want it to be relatively large. So, if it's the last guy in the list, then I can definitely go in here and say match parent. Now, I can't do that if it's in the middle, but if it's at the end, instead of matching content, I'm going to have it match the parent, which will, right, make it bigger. That way I can have lots of things. Now, so I told it I want it multi-line, but do I want any spell check going on in here? And do I want you to be able to click inside it? No, I don't want any of that, right? So when it comes time for having what the input type, I want multi-line, but I basically don't want to tell it that I want any type of suggestions going on. I could actually go to here where I tell it I want none. So now that basically neuters the guy. And so he's basically a read-only kind of guy now and no spell check, which is exactly what I had in mind. Okay. I'm going to have to change this guy to match what the other guy had, which was et display. Cool. And we're going to go back to here, and we're going to do this again. So it's still an edit tech, even though I neutered it. And then, of course, I have to go inflate the guy. Let's just do it down here. So, et display. Hey, by the way, what happens if I forget to inflate? Okay? I mean, I don't have any error messages or anything. So let's just see what happens, okay? So far, so good. I'm not doing anything at all, right? It's just like nothing. Until I get to here where I actually use the guy, and then he's going to freak out, which I don't have. So let me just continue. I was trying to show you that it crashes the program, except I haven't wired up the handler to make it happen, so... Okay. I won't show you that. r.id.et display. Okay. So now I've got something like age, and I want to be able to validate it. So I could go through the way I just right here with the string, right? I could do that and extract it. But there's actually an easier way. So I'm going to alter this guy to make it work for a GUI control. So kind of sort of pay attention because this is something that you're gonna have to kind of know how to do. So if I start with the idea of I don't want to take as an input, I want it to be a control. So one way of doing it is what's called, well, I could just call it an edit text. So I'm going to go here and make some changes. Here we go. So this thing is no longer going to be taking a string. It's going to be taking an edit text. So an edit text, I'll just call it ET. And then I want the error messages that get generated to have some sort of context. So I really want like a field name or something like that. Something that would say like age, right? Because otherwise I don't know what this thing is. So I'm going to give me a string and I'm going to call it field name. And this is just purely cosmetic. The fact that I can have an error message that actually has the word, age in it as an example. Okay, so this part, remember how we had part 1, is it empty? Well, this time I don't have to worry about it being null because that's not happening, okay? So that part is actually pretty easy. So I can just ask it if the buffer is empty. Now there's actually another way to not buffer if the edit text is empty. So let's just go in here and say, string buffer is equal to, just like we did before, this would be et.getText and then toString. Okay, remember all that? Cool. Now I'm absolutely guaranteed that this is not null, so I don't have to worry about that. So I could just ask for the link. There actually is a kind of sort of a little bit stranger way of doing it, and that is you can use the isEmpty. So I'm just going to shorten this up a little bit. And I'm going to say, I'm going to say buffer is empty. Okay, it's just a shorter way of doing it. And so I want to display something to the screen. Okay, so far so good. All right, except now I can actually be a little bit more specific. Instead of saying oops, the input, now I can say age, because now I know, right? I know what the thing is. So now I can say field name can't be null. All right, so now I can get a little bit more specific. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay, so that's one of them. Let's kind of clean up some of the others. So that one was pretty easy. Now, next we have to input the, take that number and turn it into a real integer. And so we're pretty much well guaranteed this is going to work pretty much because of the filtering capability. But, I could just put hold the 9 key down and go 9, put 40 or 50 nines in there. And then when it came time to convert, it's going to come back and say, hey man, that number is too big to fit in an integer. So it is possible that I could exceed the size, right? So it is possible, but we got to wait till chapter 17 before we can get to that. So the rest of this is pretty simple. Okay, so now I say, oops, the value. Now I can go in there and change and basically say, in this case, I want to say %s must be between. And so here I'm going to put in field variable, field name. Eeks, I took out the min. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so now my error messages are getting a little bit better, right? And then otherwise I return. So this is actually pretty decent. Let's just, when we come back from commercial break, let's just make sure this thing works.